Well, one of Darwin's most experienced barristers is calling for the board of Australia's largest Aboriginal legal service to be dissolved. John Lawrence says the crisis engulfing this agency is crippling the justice system, and it's leaving contributing to a huge number of Indigenous people in prison. Joining me live is the former Northern Territory Bar Association President, John Lawrence. John, thanks so much for your time. I know you've spoken extensively to Matt Cunningham. We spoke to him a short time ago as well, and there's been a bit of a development in this case. The Federal Attorney General's Department, Matt had a letter a little earlier on in the program essentially saying that it's in the Northern Territory government's hands now. The Northern Territory government can decide where to put this $14 million in funding. Is that a good development? Is that something that you think will lead to a better outcome?
Maybe. I'm not really interested in the shuffling of the deck chairs on the good ship Titanic, which is NAJA. Responsibility is an important thing, because one of the reasons why this organisation has been able to decline markedly over 10 to 15 years, and in particular in the last 5 years, is there's essentially no accountability for it. And it would be interesting if one of your journalists could get a hold of the NAJA Constitution, which sets up the means by which the board is elected and so forth, because up here we have a third of the population Indigenous. That's 75,000 Aboriginal people, and that organisation is supposed to organise them. It's supposed to be community run. It is not community run. It's run by a cabal of people who have been basically driving it into the ground because of their gross mismanagement and incapabilities, their lack of qualifications and so forth. And all that counts is their clients, because in my opinion, I've been here for 35 years. I used to be the senior lawyer there, so I've had a love affair with NAJA, and this is difficult for me because I've watched this happen and I've kept stum in many respects, perhaps for too long. But what counts are their clients, because it's the most important legal practice and the biggest in the Northern Territory. And they're tasked with representing the most marginalised, vulnerable, exposed people in this legal system, which in fact has now become a jail system. It's not even a legal system anymore. And their responsibilities are vast, and they need to be the best in the business. And they've failed miserably. They're failing now, they've been failing for years, and enough is enough. It has to end.
Well, surely the government's known what a failure this is, John. And it sounds like it's compounding a crime crisis that Matt Cunningham and us here on AIM Agenda have been talking about for months, if not years.
Well, look, I wouldn't agree with it compounding a nexus between NAJA being hopeless and a failure to the level of crime. That's got much bigger issues there, with respect.
But there's no reform as well going on. If you're saying that this is just a jail system, these Indigenous people who get in trouble come before the courts, essentially representing themselves, and they just get sent to jail, and then eventually they're let out with, in fact, nothing materially changing in their lives.
Absolutely spot on, Laura. On Friday, I was at Dondale to demonstrate with the group that I'm in that go every Friday. And when we got out there at 6 o'clock, we were met by 9 Aboriginal kids who had escaped their cells, who were on the roofs protesting about their conditions. They had no voice. I'm just illustrating the point you've actually made. They are voiceless, just like the Aboriginal prisoners who rioted in Alice Springs Jail. They are voiceless. So this is the problem. And as I say, it's been going on forever and a day. It's got worse and worse. There's no accountability. And it's like the Aegean stables. There is only one solution to this now, and that is that the whole of management, senior management, that board has to be hosed out completely and replaced by people who know what they're doing.
And
it's as simple as that now.
John,
that's the money, funding, anti-government. Yeah. Well, people that are experienced lawyers, qualified, experienced managers, qualified. This can work. I used to work at NAJA, and the board was spot on. It was Pat Anderson, who you'd be aware of, the figure that was involved in the voice. She was the president of the NAJA board. and other people on that board who were dedicated, industrious, political, as you need to be. They led the legal service. Now it's just been a hoax. And I really do commend that you try and look at how on earth these people get on that board because they're unrepresentative.
I know just the guy. Matt Cunningham, he brought this story to us and he linked me up with you today, so I really appreciate that. We'll pursue it, John.
It needs to be looked at. Well, I mean, just look at in the last 4 or 5 months, we've had interim CEOs, interim principal legal officers. They've came and went. They've walked in there, seen what it was like, and reversed out. I mean, Olga Havnen is one of the highest regarded CEOs in Australia. She's headed up Vanilla Dilba. She was an integral part of producing evidence for the Royal Commission. She went in there as a CEO and turned around and left. Now, you know, this is the reality. Now, there are people not being represented. There are people being, you know, hopelessly represented. And the whole system, and this is an interesting point if I can just make this.
Please.
One of the reasons why the accountability hasn't happened here is that our whole legal system pivots, depends on NAJA working. And the fact that it hasn't been working for years, everybody in the system has turned a blind eye because they've enabled it to continue even at a hopeless condition because they know that if NAJA doesn't turn up and do what they're doing, even if it's hopeless, then the system stops. And that's where we're on now. We're on the verge. When NAJA stops, which it needs to for a period before it's replaced, then the legal system here can't function. And the people that are in the positions of power and authority knew that, and they've allowed the service to deteriorate to a chronic level. And that involves a lot of pain and suffering for Aboriginal families, children, and the like.
Yeah, and it further lets down already marginalised people living in pathetic situations in and around the Northern Territory. And going back to my original point about this compounding the problems that we have brought to you many times on this program, John, hope it gets sorted out sooner rather than later. Thank you so much for your time.